Hunter is awesome. And in this space, we have conversations that very few people have. I love nuance, but more than nuance, I really like to think deeply about. She is an award-winning author. Her book is Call and Response, 10 Leadership Lessons from the Black Church. We're going to get through a few of them today. The rest of them, you're going to have to get the book to read. Let me welcome advisor, coach, etc. extraordinaire, Michelle Smith. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Karen. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited.
We were talking a little bit off mic, and you said there's a difference between the Black church and churches that have Black people.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the difference?
Well, it isn't about race, first of all. It's about culture. And the Black church tradition is rooted in a culture that goes all the way back to slave times. So these are the churches that started down by the riverside because they needed to go into the dark of night to worship away from their slave masters. Those enslavers that actually had them in church, if they allowed them in church, and treated them poorly on those pews, if they were even in pews, giving them half a Bible, if that. So they weren't comfortable there, and it wasn't what they knew. So going into the dark, deep cover of the night was not just a way to get away from these enslavers, but also to get away from the law because it was illegal to gather and worship if you were Black. And even you had some of the traditions where you would fry fish because you were down by the riverside, first of all, but you needed sustenance because you went long. Does that sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so fast forward to these enslaved people becoming freedmen and women. They break away from these white institutions. So from the Baptist, you get the National Baptist Convention and its offshoots. From the Methodist, you get the AME and the CME, right? From the Pentecostal, you're going to get Kojic, right? Church of God in Christ, and some of those offshoots. These three bodies also were the ones that started these churches and then got very active in the civil rights movement. So there is a tradition of not just the gospel music, which comes from the Baptist church, but there's also the prophetic voice, which will call a thing, calling truth to power. And then you're going to have social justice and liberation theology. Those things have to be in place for it to be in the Black church tradition. And many of the churches today may have Black preachers, may even have Black congregations, but don't follow suit.
Okay. I know what you're saying. Yeah. And I think that very thing that you mentioned, Michelle, is why so many of us today are not parking ourselves on Sunday in the pews because it doesn't feel like what it used to be. It doesn't feel like that.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things we get into in the book because a generation and a half of Black folk and also beyond millennials, like half of the younger millennials and Gen Zers just don't come to the building, whether they believe or not. And some of what we're hearing from the young people is, where is the Black church? We don't see them being the Black church. Well, there is some confusion because some of these young folks, the Gen Xers, my generation, and I'm not one of them, is not teaching them their history.
That's right.
And what constitutes a Black church. So you'll see young people go to a multicultural church and then wonder why they didn't talk about George Floyd. Not understanding that those multicultural churches come exactly from the white evangelical traditions and also often funded by them. So that message will not be there. Many of the churches that took the prosperity route veered off of the path of the traditional Black church because the traditional Black church centers the gospel and that liberation theology that's within it. It does not stray from that. And so you'll see in the back of the book, there's a resource with the call and response churches. That's what we call them. These are the churches that made the leaders in the book. And these leaders are mostly Gen X, a couple of boomers. I would call one of them at least a cusper. But they came up in these churches and these churches are still alive. But here's the thing. Most of them aren't these mega, I call them big box churches, because a lot of the big box churches have taken that path or they've taken other paths. Mm-hmm. And so they're not the hip churches, if you will, right, but they're still alive and they're still kicking. So we're honoring them.
I love that. And I think that's important. Michelle Smith is here. Call and Response is the book, 10 Leadership Lessons from the Black Church. Okay.